Hey, as we kick things off, a couple of things I just wanted to share with you. One, we are going to leverage our Q&A feature. So if you look in your Zoom setup, there should be a Q&A button. If you've got questions as we're moving through this webinar today, feel free to put those right in there. Jenna Sampson, who's on my team, is with me. She's going to be managing those questions. We may answer some of those as we move through the webinar, but we're definitely going to have a Q&A time at the end. So certainly if you've got some key questions that are on your mind, we're definitely going to have an open Q&A at the end, and we'll pull folks on stage, and you'll have a chance to get those questions answered real time then, but certainly along the way as well. Hey, another great piece of info. If you are a CEPA, because this webinar is for CEPAs, Certified Exit Planning Advisors, this webinar was just approved today by EPI for 1 hour of continuing education credit. So I want to make you aware of that. You'll need to submit that, but this can count towards your ongoing CE hours. But so excited to be with you. Again, leverage the Q&A feature. But as we kick things off, just curious, feel free to join in the chat. Tell us where you're from. We've got folks from all over the country. If you want to drop in the 2-letter state code where you are from, love to see where everybody is tuning in from. As you're doing that, excited to share with you the agenda that we're going to cover today that you can see on screen. 4 different things. 1, challenges that CEPA wealth advisors are facing. You might be here because you felt that. Hey, how do I operationalize that CEPA designation? How do I really get started? And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the value of business exit advisory to your firm and practice. Then thirdly, we're going to talk about building your exit advisory team. But fourthly, we are going to press the rubber to the road. We're going to lay out a definitive playbook about how to get started. And again, looking at the chat, Pam, great to see you from Florida. Chris right here from good old South Carolina, because we're in South Carolina. Emery, so great to have you join us as well. And David, good to see you. David Benner, Robert. Again, lots of friends new and old. Thanks for being here with us today. Exciting news that we've got, and that is that we have just today launched our playbook for CEPAs. And part of what we are covering in this webinar is part of that playbook, but there is an entire additional sections of that playbook. And so I'm super excited about that. At the very end of the webinar, we'll have a QR code on screen. You'll be able to download that. It's about 30 pages. We've run it past at least 10 different CEPA advisors, and they have thought that it was value saturated with things that really could help them get started in their practice. Other piece of the puzzle is you say, hey, what about the other content that's in that playbook? Since we're not going to get to all that today, we will have a second webinar next month. So keep tuned in your email. But with that, I'll kick it off here with a couple of opening slides on us and how we think about exit advisory, just 2 or 3 slides, and then we're going to dive right into the content. Some of you I have not had the privilege to meet. I'm so honored that you're here with us today. You say, hey, Micah, who are you? Who's the Legendary Exits team? And so just share with you a couple of quick things on screen. First 10 years of my career I spent in banking, financing a lot of different companies. Last 10 years of my career I've really spent in the entrepreneurial space. I've been a COO at one company where I did a turnaround. I've been a chief financial officer at another company. I'm obviously the president of my own firm, Legendary Exits, where we're building really the premier business exit advisory or value growth advisory firm in the US. But you can see certain things that are on screen. I just share that with you to say we've got real world experience. It's not just a course or a designation that me and our team has. Our combined team is 5 different exits, both to public companies, to private equity, into other private companies. We've grown and scaled companies that's put us on high growth lists like the Inc. 5000. And so a lot of what we do in our practice with business owners and alongside wealth advisor CEPAs comes from that real world experience married up with the amazing model that comes from EPI and the CEPA program. So what makes for a legendary exit? So the name of our firm is Legendary Exits, and we believe that not every exit is a legendary exit, but we think there's 3 things that make for a legendary exit, and you'll see those on screen. First, an exit is way more than the numbers, and we know about this from our CEPA designation, but we believe it starts by living a life of significance now, not after the exit, but today. And so we've got a process where we take clients through that and help them define for themselves what a life of significance looks like so they can begin aligning and living it now, but also envision what that looks like after the exit. 2, it's leveraging the exit to fully fund that owner's personal financial goals, to make them independent and enable them to live that life of significance for the rest of their life after they exit. And then thirdly, it's building a best-in-class business, a 75th percentile business, a business that is better than 75% of its peers, one that is best in class, not just because it's easier to sell or more profitable, although those are great things, but so that business owner can have a greater impact in the lives of their employees, their customers, and of course, even their family as shareholders. And so those are the three things that we're passionate about. We think if you're going to have a legendary exit, it's more than the numbers. It starts with living a life of meaning. It starts by doing proper personal financial planning, which I know everybody on this call is an advocate of, that's going to lead to a meaningful target valuation number, one that funds that client's wealth gap. And then it means transforming that business along the way to be best in class. Hey, one of the reasons that you might be here pertains to the slide that I'm showing you up on screen. And there is a challenge in our community, in the Exit Planning Institute CEPA community, and that is there's 7,000 of us out there, but the vast majority of us who are CEPAs are wealth advisors. You see it on screen. 75% of folks who hold the CEPA designation are financial advisors or wealth advisors. So you say, well, what is the balance? Well, about 2% of us, including myself and folks at my firm, are what we call business value growth advisors. We focus on transforming the companies. And then the balance, those 23%, you say, well, who are those, Micah? They're business brokers, they're general business coaches and consultants, they're CFOs or fractional CFOs, they're bankers, they're CPAs and insurance folks. Um, and part of the reason I bring this up at the outset of this conversation is the EPI model, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today, and we're going to actually not a little bit, we're going to talk deeply about it today, really hinges on wealth advisors linking arms with a business value growth advisor. But as you can see, there's very, very few of us out there, and that presents a challenge for you in your ability to execute on this model. And so I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about solutions for that. I want to talk about how to select a business value growth advisor, what you want to do, the questions that you want to be asking to create a great partnership, so you can begin to operationalize that CEPA designation and actually experience growth in your practice by more clients exiting and more clients exiting at higher valuations. I do want to talk a little bit about, yes, there's a lack of business value growth advisors, but in this amazing framework that we've all learned through our CEPA education, there are some challenges that come along with that. One of those challenges is too much flexibility, right? Hey, what do I want to do? How do I want to deploy this exit advisory concept as a wealth advisor? What am I competent to do? What will my compliance at my broker dealer or RIA allow me to do? And so for so many wealth advisors, there's a lot of confusion around, hey, do I want to be a quarterback? Do I want to even dabble in this value growth advisor space in that role? And that might be what's holding you back from actually fully deploying and realizing the value from that designation that you've got. I do want to acknowledge that there are limited partnerships with value growth advisors. There's very few of us in the community relative to the number of wealth advisors, and that presents a challenge, right? And then certainly there's just a lot of questions about, well, what are the best practices as a wealth advisor? What should I be doing and should not be doing? And so we work with uh, quite a few, hundreds of wealth advisors around the country in partnership. And so we want to share with you some of those best practices today so that you can get out of the gate, so that you can begin to actually experience the value of the CEPA designation, so that you can benefit your clients and grow your practice in the process. He, I want to just jump right into the second bullet point of the value of business exit advisory to your firm. Maybe you've thought about this, maybe you've tried to quantify it, but what I would say is this, and I say this as a CFO who creates lots of financial models. We have run the numbers with dozens of different wealth advisors. And if you are focused on growth in your practice, exit advisory can actually own up to 30% of your growth goals over the next 5 to 10 years. Just by focusing on the current clients that you've got and serving them really well, that could actually own up to 30% of your growth goals in the next 10 years. Now, I want to break down the value that you get. We're going to go through this in 3 different time horizons real quickly. But 3 common situations, and I've been in meetings today, I've been in meetings yesterday with advisors, I've been in meetings last week. 3 common situations that come up as folks are thinking about how they're going to operationalize exit advisory as a wealth advisor. One, some advisors are thinking, hey, how do I charge a fee for this? How do I monetize this? How do I begin to extract value through charging fee for service consulting? Other advisors are thinking, man, I love the idea of this concept of being the quarterback and developing these advisory teams, but maybe I can or I can't charge for it based upon the way that my firm is set up. But that's going to take a whole lot of time. And I'm not really sure if I want to do that, if that's going to distract from my core business. And then, certainly there are other advisors who are they're really just thinking, well, how does this benefit me? I love this. But really, how do we generate income off of this CEPA designation? And so I want to be really clear with you. EPI has a very flexible model, right, in how you deploy all this. I am not going to be flexible with you today and what I recommend that you do, because again, I think there's too much flexibility. You may come away from this webinar today and say, Micah, I want to deploy this in a different way, and that's totally okay. But what I want to help you with is a very clear, very actionable, very proven methodology that is going to provide value to you and to your practice and is going to serve your business owners at the same time. And so I want to take away a lot of that flexibility, and I want to just present a very clear path to you today. And so 3 different time horizons of value that Exit Advisory is going to provide to you and to your firm as you're seeking to grow your practice. The first one is I want to start at the longest time horizon. If you're doing exit advisory well, and we're going to talk about this in the 3 to 10 year mark, we're going to talk about this in the medium term, the 9 to 15 month mark. We're going to talk about this in the short term, the 3 to 9 month mark, as a heads up. Long-term value. Here's what the value proposition is. More liquidity events and larger liquidity events. So one of the things we learned through our CEPA designation is that 70% of companies go to market fail to sell. What if, so that means that 30% of your clients, if let's say you have 10 business owner clients in your base, that means 7 won't sell and 3 will. What if we could increase that from 30% who will sell to 90%? What if you could look at those 10 clients in your base and through exit advisory, we could get 9 to exit instead of just 3 to exit? That would mean more liquidity events and more AUM to manage. At the same time, what if through a structured value acceleration process, you could double or triple or 4x the value of your client's company, not overnight, but over a 5-year window? And I would say that's very feasible and achievable because this is what our firm does all day long. 2x, 3x, 4x over a 5-year window with clients. That's going to mean that not only you're going to have 3 times the amount of liquidity events, these liquidity events are going to be worth 2, 3, 4 times more. And you say, Michael, what does this look like just for 10 business owner clients? Sort of real succinctly. If you apply the 70% failure rate and you don't help your clients grow their valuation on 10 clients, you'd probably have average exits of maybe about $13 million of AUM to manage from those clients. I'm pegging those at about 1.5 million per client in an exit. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is in a moment. If you were to do exit advisory with those clients, 2, 3, 4x their valuations and take 30% up to 90%, you'd have 162 million of assets to manage. Would you like to have 13 million or would you like to have 162 million? I think everybody would like to have the 162. But the key piece is this is a long-term value proposition. The liquidity events don't happen overnight. They're 3 to 10 years into the future. I want to talk about the midterm value range, which is 9 to 15 months real quickly. We see 2 different value propositions here to you and to your firm about 9 to 15 months into working with business owners on exit advisory. The first one is this. There is such a differentiated client experience, the team-based advising, the cohesiveness, the forward progress that a client makes. It is a differentiated client experience. It is on that basis that your business owner clients will begin to make introductions to other folks in their peer network. They have to experience the magic first. They're not going to do it right out of the gate, but we typically find in the 9 to 15 month window, that's when the introductions start to flow to other folks in their network and in their peer groups. The second piece of the puzzle is this. Our average client in the first 6 to 12 months, just in our own practice, we can't speak to what other folks are doing. Our average client is typically experiencing about a 30% lift in profitability in the first 6 to 12 months. And so just in that first 6 to 12 months, there is going to be additional and greater profitability. And that's going to have opportunities to either be fueled back into growth or to be distributed out of the company for further investment, right? That's our mid-range value proposition. You say, Micah, hey, what's in it in the short term? I'm really focused on 2025. If you get started today, there's really three different ways that we see value happening in the short term. The first is this: if you do fee-for-service financial planning, there are going to be financial planning opportunities. We do not work with anyone that is not back in touch with their financial advisor, rerunning scenarios on that exit, which we will work with the advisor on and help tease that out to make sure that we're setting our target valuation of where we're trying to grow the company to the right place. Second thing is this: when we get involved, we're meeting with all of that client's advisors. We're meeting with their estate planning attorney, their M&A attorney, their CPA. And generally, we're briefing them on the process that we're running. At the end of every meeting, I always say to folks, I always ask these folks this question and say, hey, wouldn't it be great? Did you love this process? And they say, oh man, this is amazing. I'm so glad you looped us in. I'm glad that we've got a structured process. This is something this client has needed to do for quite a long time. And what I'll say at that point is I'll say, man, wouldn't it be amazing if all your clients followed a process like this? And they said, yeah, it would be. And I'll say, well, hey, you really need to get connected with the wealth advisor that introduced us to their client. And so there is just team-based selling that happens where we can reinforce what you're doing and generate more referral opportunities back. And then, of course, the last one is just retention. Everyone is talking about exit advisory. And so if you're not fulfilling that need for your client, right, there are other voices out there in the marketplace that are going to address that and seek to take those clients and the management of that liquidity event outside of your practice and somewhere else. I do want to transition to as we think about, we've talked a little bit about the challenges, we've talked about the value of exit advisory. I want to talk a little bit about just this process of building the team and preparing to serve clients, and then we're going to move into the concept of our last agenda point, which is escaping me at the current moment. And so I'm looking at my slides. Your 12-month playbook, pressing the rubber to the road. Hey, I'm just going to pause here. Jenna, any questions that are pressing questions that we ought to answer now, or anything that you want to hold until the end?
Well, we did have a great question from Richard. Maybe this is something that you're going to cover later on, but he's got one business selling to his employees and another launching with a round of funding, but he can't find any pathways to find funding for those events.
Yeah, yeah. And so that probably is one that we should pull Richard on stage at the end and have a live discussion on. But as I'm understanding your question, Richard, it's really more of a fundraising issue. And so, yeah, we do have some experience with that. Love to talk with you about that. Let's cue that up for the end, Jenna, in our live Q&A. Great. Anything else, Jenna, we should cover before we keep moving?
I think we can save the others for the end as well.
Wonderful. And again, just a quick reminder of that Q&A feature. If you've joined us since we've started, if you've got questions that popped up, maybe we're working through some slides, you say, hey, that's great, but I've got a really detailed follow-up question, or something that just is on your mind, put that in the Q&A feature. Jenna is managing that list, and we're going to get to that at the end if we don't address those along the way. So with that, let's dive into our third agenda point today, and the agenda point of preparing to serve our clients, building our team. What does that look like? So again, so far we've talked about some of the challenges. We've talked about the value of exit advisory to you and your firm, and the amazing opportunity to both serve clients and grow your assets under management through the process. So if you believe in the value of exit advisory for you and your firm, I think one of the things you've got to think about is, what does it take to actually serve clients effectively? Right. And this is where we're going to start to take this broad model and really narrow it down and give you very specifics about the way that we believe in the best practices, quite frankly, we've seen in wealth advisors who are operationalizing this model. So thing you're seeing on screen is the three legs of the stool. We learned about this in the CEPA program, right? A successful exit considers the personal side of the house, the personal, financial, and the business. And what I know about most wealth advisors that I've met in my career and that we partner with is that you are amazing at the personal financial planning. You're amazing at even drawing out from clients what their dreams and aspirations are personally for their life. Where things start to get complicated is in the business leg. Things like reviewing company financials, income statements and balance sheets, things like valuing companies, benchmarking companies, setting that vision of best-in-class performance, assessing companies, transformation initiatives. Literally, how do we capture that profit gap? Is it a utilization rate issue? Is it a pricing issue? Is it a team issue? Right? Most advisors we speak to just don't have that expertise. And so they want to stay in that swim lane of doing personal financial planning. That's how they make their money. So while they may want to position that they serve business owners, realistically for most advisors, they're going to continue to be in that lane of doing that personal financial planning and advising, but positioning it for business owners. I think a key question that you've got to ask yourself as you think about operationalizing your CEPA as a wealth advisor is, what expertise do I have and where do I want to put my focus? Right? So, on the expertise question, here's the question I would encourage you to ask yourself, right? In this context of executing on all of exit advisory and whether you're trying to do this on your own or whether you're building a team. First question I would ask myself is this: do I have the expertise? Hey, what's my background? Have I been a COO? Have I been a CFO? Have I been a president of a company or an M&A advisor? Can you advise clients on how to fix their go-to-market strategy, their product, their price, their marketing, their sales? Do you have fluency in operations with people in strategy and planning and execution or leadership development? If not, that's totally okay, but you probably need to link arms with a business value growth advisor. From a focus point of view, I would encourage you to ask the question, look at your service offerings today. Do you have all of the tools, all of the knowledge in-house, either on your team or inside of your broker dealer or your RIA? Do you have all of those tools and knowledge you need in-house to be able to do this? Will your broker dealer or RIA allow you to be involved in anything pertaining with evaluation? We oftentimes find from a compliance point of view, that's a really sticky wicket. Do you want value growth advisory to be a core service offering, or do you want to continue to differentiate and focus on the personal financial planning, the management of assets, growing AUM, but leverage the CEPA designation as a differentiator? And quite frankly, do the value growth advisory and the assessing by, again, linking arms with a third party, AKA a business value growth advisor. I think one of the things that's super important for everyone in this call is to answer the question, what role are you playing? If you don't answer that question, you will not be able to move forward with confidence and you will not be able to extract the greatest amount of value from your CEPA designation. And again, I would suggest that in my experience, 99% of wealth advisors are going to say, I want to focus on growing assets under management. I want to do personal financial planning and tax planning for business owners. I just don't want to be involved with the business piece of the puzzle. And so if that's you, we've got some very specific move forward thoughts about how to tackle that today. Next question, I would just say around building a team and getting out of the gate. And of course, then we're going to go to our rubber meets the road playbook of exactly the actions that you need to take over the next 90 days. I would say ask yourself a question, whether you've gotten your CEPA designation in the last 3 months or whether it's been in the last 3 years. Is this a strategic priority for you and for your practice to serve business owners? If it is, then we're going to show you in the remaining part of this webinar how to build a team and the specific steps that you need to take over the next 90 days to actually get out of the gate and really begin to serve clients and actually start doing exit advisory. If this isn't a strategic focus for you, and let's say it was fascinating continuing education, it was an amazing expansion to your knowledge set, I would say acknowledge that, set this aside, realize that it's not a priority so that you can focus on the things in your practice that are a priority. But again, if it is a priority, buckle up. We're getting ready to go a little bit deeper here. So building your exit advisory team, first of the two steps. So whereas again, the CEPA model is fluid, we're going to be very dogmatic in this phone call about a right way and a clear proven path to be able to get to value. Again, you can take a different approach. It's just not the approach that we would recommend or that we've seen or that we think most advisors are using to extract the greatest amount of value, both in how they serve clients and also in how they're growing their practice. Again, EPI has a very broad approach on teams, and if you've been through the training, as everybody on this call for the most part has, because you get your CEPA designation, you've heard about team-based advising. We believe in team-based advising. We have seen the power of that in our own practice. But we are very clear that there are 5 core roles. You can have more than this in a team, but you can never have less than this on the team. It's the wealth advisor, it's the business value growth advisor, the estate planning attorney, the tax strategist, and the M&A attorney. That is your core team. Anybody else is a nice to have, but they are not at the core of, in our opinion, they are not at the core of what is absolutely needed to be able to accomplish what your client needs in exit advisory. You say, hey, Michael, what do these people do? Well, really, in a nutshell, if we get away from titles, we get away from roles, it's really four things. The roles that I just shared with you help your client, one, build a best-in-class company. Best-in-class companies are more profitable. Best-in-class companies are going to 2, 3, 4x their valuation over the next 5 years. That's first thing that that team is going to do. Second thing is minimize taxation, right? This is where wealth advisors in particular often have amazing strategies to be able to minimize that taxation at the liquidity event and certainly along the way. Planning and crafting strategies to fully fund that owner's personal financial goals. That is personal financial planning. And then again, that personal leg of the stool, how do we help that owner discern what a life of significance looks like so that they don't have regret after the sale? I would say this is the core. The core is building a great business, minimizing taxation, personal financial planning, and enabling no regrets. Do clients have other needs as you move through the process? 100% they do. But at the end of the day, exit advisory, in our opinion, really is about accomplishing these four things. And it is the five folks that I listed on this slide here that are going to be central and core to delivering those to your client. I do want to talk about the fact that I think that there's an inner circle, and we've seen this. And even as we go back, and even as we look at what this means here, building a best-in-class business, who's doing it? It's a business value growth advisor who's doing it, right? With you, and in concert with you, and in concert with your client. Minimizing taxation, that typically is a wealth advisor leading the charge on that. Crafting a strategy to fully fund personal financial goals, that is the wealth advisor. And then whether it's the wealth advisor or the business value growth advisor, helping the client think about that life of significance and deploying it. We personally do that in our own practice. That's the other missing link. And that leads us to the conclusion that there really are two core roles that have to be joined at the hip in this model. And that is you as the wealth advisor and your value growth advisor. So, a couple of next things. Critical first steps of any advisory engagement. What are you doing at the outset? Again, we know about the triggering event, but if we think about it in different language, we'd say we're evaluating the business's attractiveness and readiness to sell. We're determining its present valuation and growth potential, right? Clients say, "Hey, what's my business worth today?" Well, what's the realm of possibility of what I could take it to? Hey, that owner needs to get clear on their preferred transition mechanism, whether it's passing it down to children inside the business or a sale to private equity or a sale to a leader inside of the business as a management buyout. You know, developing that comprehensive personal financial plan, creating that business strategy that builds on that enterprise value. These are all things that we believe need to take place in the first 6 months of an engagement with a client. And again, it's the personal wealth advisor, it's the business value growth advisor that are the core. Again, that tax strategist, that M&A attorney, that estate planning attorney, also going to be part of this in the first 6 months. But again, just showing you why we believe that those two roles are at the core and then an extended team of five. So that obviously leads to a point, right? And in full transparency, our firm is Business Value Growth Advisors. But what I want to equip you with here today is a way of thinking about how to partner with any value growth advisor, whether it's with us or whether it's with anyone else that you would choose to work with. And we think there's three key elements. If you're going to link arms with a value growth advisor and have a great partnership and actually serve clients effectively, you need to understand three things about that business value growth advisor. One, you need to understand who they are serving. Who is their ideal client profile? A value growth advisor who says they serve everyone, I can already tell you right out of the gate that is a bad fit to be working with. Second thing is, what is their methodology? How do they render services to a client? And then the third thing you need to understand is the pricing structure. You don't have to understand all the details, but certainly a range of what they charge to clients, the investments that clients make. I think that's super helpful as you seek to position that advisor with your client. Let's dive into ideal client profile. And I want to break a couple of things down for you here. So in 2024, the SBA put out a study. And by the way, I'll just share that at Legendary Exits, we are a preferred partner of the SBA. We were the subject matter experts for the SBA Thrive cohort of 1,000 entrepreneurs nationwide last fall and have been involved in mentoring entrepreneurs through the SBA's program. But if you go out, the SBA puts out a study every year. It breaks down small businesses in America. There are 34.7 million small businesses in America, which they define as 0 to 499 businesses. Pardon me, 0 to 499 employees in the US. What I want you to see here with this pie chart that's on screen is that the vast majority of businesses in the US are solopreneurs. And if you're seeking to grow your practice with business owners, you really want to pay attention to this slide. This is a very, very important slide for targeting, and I'm going to break down in a minute why. So 82% of this 34 million are solopreneurs. They do not have a single employee. What do we know about selling companies? For the most part, these solopreneur businesses are not going to transact. They have no value. There are exceptions to that. There's intellectual property. I understand the nuance, but in general, I would just share with you as a wealth advisor, solopreneurs are putting out cash flow for today. They don't have a sellable business for the most part. Always there are exceptions. When you get into the 1 to 19 employee segment, that's 16% of that 34 million. That's about 5.5 million businesses across the US. I want you to pay close attention here to this last sliver, the 20 to 499 employee sliver. That is only 2% of those 34 million small businesses. And I think we all agree that a 499 employee business is not really that small, but that's the cutoff of what the SBA tracks. So there are something like 607,000 businesses in the US that have 20 to 499 employees. These are the kinds of businesses that, on average, have exits. They have liquidity events that start at roughly $1.5 million and up. I bring this up because if you're working primarily with solopreneurs, they're not ultimately going to have exits. The 1 to 19 employees can have exits. They're just going to be smaller exits. And so if you're seeking to structure your practice in such a way that you're positioning for these larger exits north of $1.5 million, this is the segment you want to be focused on. But two impacts to you. The first impact is this isn't the average person you're bumping into around town at a networking event. This is a very small subset of overall business owners. The second thing is uh, these business owners require different ways of serving, right? They have different sets of expectations. I want to dial into this 2% segment real quick, and I want to give you our take. We actually break down those 607,000 businesses. We think about them in four distinct segments. And where I want to call your attention to on screen, and again, we're in the context of saying, who does your value growth advisor work for? What are the kinds of companies they serve? This is part of your interviewing process that you want to understand to have a great partnership. We think there's four distinct segments, and without going into detail, I look at them in profit, right? A half million to 1.5 million, 1.5 to 3 million in bottom line profit, 3 to 10 or over 10 million. But what I want to call your attention to is on the right side, there are these bolded numbers. The 1.5 to 6 million, the 6 million to 20 million, the 20 million to 150, and the greater than $150 million exit, right? What I can tell you is this. I've been serving businesses as a banker and as a consultant and as a leader myself for the last 20 years of my life. What it takes to serve a client in this first bucket with 20 to 70 employees as a value growth advisor is very different than what a company in the 3 to 10 million with 75 to 250 employees needs. And so a great value growth advisor is going to have either a specific market segment that they're addressing, or they're going to have the skills to address multiple segments, but the competency to know that the way that they deliver service is going to be different for each. As an example, in our practice, we don't focus on the over 10 million segment, and we don't focus on that under a half million in annual profit segment. We focus on these first three segments, companies generating at least a half million in profit, up to 10 million in profit. And I think, again, as an advisor, as a quick aside, we have different approaches because in the life cycle of growing a business, the needs are different. And because I've been a leader inside of companies in each of these segments, I understand those differentiators both through my internal work as well as consulting work in the work of our team. Um, so I hope this is helpful to you in breaking down the market. Again, two big takeaways I would take away. One for your own practice is that if you're seeking to deal with business owners who are going to have exits greater than 1.5 million, you need to get really, really dialed in on targeting those people and connecting with them. We're going to talk about that more in that playbook that you can download at the end of this webinar and also in our webinar next month. But what I will say today is that you want to be thinking as you're linking arms with a business value growth advisor, what segment do they serve and how do they tailor their approach to meet the varying needs and expectations of those segments? Two other things real quickly, methodology and pricing. And so I would just say, yeah, what is the methodology whereby that business value growth advisor is rendering services to clients? How do they do it? It's important for you to understand that. There are different expectations. It's important to understand that your value growth advisor has different ways of delivering for those sizes of companies. The way that I would describe it to you is if you were working with a client who had $2 million in investable assets and you were working with one that had 50 million in investable assets, would your planning and your approach be different? Of course it would be. In part because of client need, but in part because those clients have different levels of expectation. Again, in the world of business, it's the same exact way. And so again, the way that we address, an emerging company with 30 employees who's generating $500,000 of profit is going to be very different than that company with 85 employees and $2.2 million of profit, right? Next thing I would just encourage you to think about is, again, just become broadly familiar with your value growth advisor's range of pricing so that you can position that. As you're talking with clients, you say, hey, this is going to be an investment. There's a very high return on investment, but you're going to need to invest to be able to reap the benefits of this. And that's just obviously how everything in business works. And so as an example, again, in our practice, our ongoing relationships with clients range anywhere from $3,000 a month to $15,000 a month. We have a very core engagement at $7,500 a month. We have a strategic advisory engagement for smaller companies at $3,000 a month. We've got a core engagement plus at $15,000 a month. But folks who work with us know that pricing, and as they're speaking to their clients, they say, hey, we've got a partnership with the Legendary Exits team, and generally those investments are as little as $3,000 a month and up to $15,000 a month. And that way that client is positioned and understanding what that investment is that they need to make in order to be able to achieve that value of increased profitability and ultimately a greater exit price and ultimately a greater likelihood of exiting. A couple of key insights as we wrap this up and we go to the rubber meets the road section here around what you need to do over the next 12 months and the next 90 days to operationalize your CEPA. And that is, again, no business value growth advisor is able to serve all market segments with equal effectiveness. Each market segment has different needs, different expectations, different pricing tolerances. And so I would just encourage you to dig into those things as you seek to link arms with a business value growth advisor. With that, we are going to position now or transition now into our last segment of this webinar, and then of course open it up for Q&A. And that is implementing all of this. You say, hey, Micah, this is great. I understand the challenges. I understand the value. I want to do business exit advisory. I am doing business exit advisory. That was really great to hear about building my team with the 5 core roles and the inner circle with a value growth advisor and even how to interview a value growth advisor. What do I do? How do I take the next step? And so if that's what you're asking yourself, let's lock and load and let's answer that question. First thing I would just say is this: start with current clients. If you've got business owner clients, so step back. If I'm consulting with a company and you're, a industrial waste hauling company like a client that we work with, or you are a construction company like another client, or you are a manufacturer, or you are a wealth advisor, the number one opportunity is always to start with current clients. If we're thinking about adding additional sales, additional margin, it's always current clients. And so the first thing I would just encourage you is start with your current business owner clients. If you don't have a lot of current business owner clients, you don't have them in that top 2% segment, then leverage those existing personal clients to garner introductions to folks in their network that would meet that criteria. And again, why do we focus on current clients? Again, the fundamentals in every business. Current clients convert faster. They buy products faster. The sales cycle is shorter. They've got higher close rates. And then again, we want to address their needs to retain their business because we don't want them going elsewhere to get their exit advisory advice taken care of. Again, just for one of our partners, I'll share this super quickly. I've had a conversation and we work with a partner who, when we first connected with them, he said, Micah, I don't have 100 business owner clients, but I've got 10. And I've got 10 that are in that at least a $500,000 in profitability segment. And what we figured out is that just by focusing on that 10, just by going from 30% likely to sell to 90%, by assuming a level of increase in valuation growth over a 5-year window, this advisor would be able to add an extra almost $150 million in assets under management just by serving current clients. And that doesn't even begin to think about the value of those introductions from the advisory team or the value of the introductions of that client to folks who are in their peer network. And so again, I just want to encourage you, start with current clients, current business owner clients. If you don't have a lot of business owner clients or they're not in the market segment you want to be working with, get clear about the market segment you want to work with and leverage that client base to generate introductions and referrals to folks that are the ones that you want to be working with. Okay, rubber meets the road as we think about serving either current clients or prospective clients, either bucket. We need a playbook to do that. We need a series of actions to take next, and that's where we want to focus our remaining time together. First thing I would just say is start with the end in mind. Love Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of those habits, if you've read it, is to start with the end in mind. And I would just say, set a goal. Set a goal for the first 90 days. And the goal that I would encourage you is have 3 conversations with business owners over the next 90 days so that one of those conversations ultimately can move into doing an exit advisory for that business owner. So first thing is just set an intention, set a goal for the next 90 days. And that would be to have 3 conversations with business owners, either current clients or prospective, with a goal of having one of those clients do exit advisory. You say, hey, that sounds great. How do I do it? I am glad you asked. What I'm going to walk through is a month-by-month playbook. But what you're going to see in every month is that there is a one-to-many action and a one-to-one action. And so that's going to be the breakdown as we walk through this playbook over the next 12 months. A one-to-many communication and one-to-one action. So here we go. Month 1, this is exactly what we believe you should do. In the first month, you are going to have a goal of crafting a distribution list, an email list. So you're going to take your entire client portfolio, segment it out, business versus personal, if that's not already been done, and you're going to set up a distribution a list in a mechanism in a way to communicate on a one-to-many basis with those clients. One business list, one list for clients who are business owners, and one for clients who are not business owners, right? So there's going to be some time that's going to be required in that first month if you've not already done that work to segment, to go through and to do that. And so what we're going to do with that list is we're going to move to the second icon in the middle, is sheerly make an announcement in the first month. Hey, I have my CEPA designation. I am offering exit advisory services. Here's what that means. And I welcome you to open up a conversation with us or introduce us to folks that you know that are business exit, that are business owners. You say, Micah, that sounds great. I have no idea what to say. We've got you covered. In the playbook that you're going to be able to download here at the very end of this webinar, it's about a 30-page playbook that we have written exclusively for CEPA Wealth Advisors to operationalize this. We have crafted the announcement for you. You can literally cut and paste it, mod it, and put it into your email tool and send that out. So that is ready to lock and load for you. And you'll want that through the download of that Wealth Advisor playbook at the end of this call. The second piece of the puzzle is you want to identify 3 business owners that you want to reach out to. Obviously, if you've got current clients in your client base, you want to think through that and say, who are the 3? Have we had conversations to date about exit advisory or about their future plans? And we just haven't been able to address it at this point? Great, call those 3, right? Maybe you haven't done that yet. And maybe you're just reaching out to 3 current business owners. Or again, maybe you're in a building phase, a newer advisor, and you're saying, hey, I'm trying to build the target client base that I want. I would say leverage existing relationships to garner introductions to business owners who have 20 or more employees, right? That should be a very clear goal. You say, Micah, this sounds great. What am I going to say when I call them? Again, we have you covered. In the appendix of that playbook that you're going to be able to download here at the end, we have 3 conversations that we chart out. And it's just going to be as simple as you calling, a current client or that introduction client saying, hey, I've recently achieved an exit advisory designation because we're rolling out an entirely new service line and a product offering exclusively to serve business owners because we know business owners have very specific needs. And from there, you're just going to roll into the script that we have laid out. We've got 3 different conversations. It could be as simple as what we call the integrated conversation. 3 questions. Hey, tell me about your future plans for the business. How long do you see yourself being active in your current role? That's a time frame question. Second question. Hey, have you thought about what the transition will look like when the time comes to transition? Do you know what your options are about who you're going to sell to? That's an 8 ways to exit question, coming back to our CEPA training. Third question. Hey, how confident are you that if you were to sell, how confident are you that you would sell at best in class price and terms based upon where you are today? That's a ready and attractive to sell, a profit gap and a value gap question, right? So we've got that all baked out for you, literally scripted. You can go through that and literally deploy that tomorrow if you would like to by downloading that playbook at the end of this webinar. So you say month 1, we're setting up the email list. We're doing our one-to-many announcement that we're doing exit advisory and we're reaching out. Okay, where do we go from there, Micah? Month 2 is a little bit of rinse and repeat. We're sending out an email and we're reaching out to 3 business owners to have one-to-one conversations. You say monthly email. What am I saying in this monthly email? 2 things. You're inviting them to get educated on a topic related to exit advisory, and you're inviting them to just have a conversation with you. Either or. Which one would they prefer? You say, Micah, what would I promote for educational opportunities? Again, we've got you covered. If you're partnering with the Legendary Exits team, we run a monthly webinar. So next week at the same time on Tuesday, whatever 1 week from today's date is, Tuesday next week at 4 Eastern, we will be running a webinar geared for business owners on the 8 questions that every business owner needs to answer. And so you're welcome to share that in your monthly email. You're welcome to share our Ready to Exit assessment. We've got a ton of resources. I'll go through this at the end, but that webinar would be a great one where they don't have to come into a one-to-one meeting. They can actually get educated on the exit advisory process, and then that makes for a great follow-up for you to have that one-to-one conversation with them about taking the next step. A couple things that we've learned that we want to share with you, and that is what motivates business owners to take action. Fear about their current ability to sell. This is attractiveness and readiness. That's one reason. Second, curiosity. What is my business worth today? How do I grow the value? Thirdly, hey, I know I want to exit in the future. I'm not really sure about the process. Who do I need in the team? That's a really common question that we get. Fourth, hey, it's great that we did this personal financial planning, and I know I've got a gap here, a wealth gap. How do I grow my valuation to be able to get there? And then the last, and we see this with younger owners, 30s, 40s, into early 50s. Hey, I want to work in the business for the next 10 years. I'm not interested in exiting. I just want to know, how do I build a better business? And the great news about exit advisory is as we get clear in the future, it helps us transform our company today to best in class. And so these are 5 things that we have seen and that we think you should focus on in your conversations with your client. As we distill all this down about what motivates clients, clients are motivated by the exit or they're motivated by building a better business today. That's what motivates clients. Lots of sub themes that we could talk about, but it's growing valuation, minimizing taxation, and the exit, and it's building a better business today so that that owner can be working less hours, so they can pay themselves more money, so that they can have time for hobbies outside of the business. That's what building a better business does for an owner. Last couple of things as we come into the home stretch. That second 90 days, months 4 to 6, what are we doing here? We're rinsing and repeating. We're keeping that momentum of sending out that monthly email with the educational opportunity and the invitation to chat, and we're reaching out to 3 business owners each month. The new thing that we're doing here is that we are integrating exit advisory into our current business processes. So you've probably got processes about how you do discovery, about how you do client onboarding, about how you do annual or quarterly or biannual reviews, whatever it is that you do. This is the point where we encourage our advisors that we partner with to incorporate a handful of key discovery questions, like the 3 that I read out loud, into your discovery process. Again, you say, Micah, what would those be? Again, we've got you covered. It's in the appendix to our Wealth Advisor playbook. Months 7 to 12. So again, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What are we really doing? We're continuing. We're continuing to pick up the pace on our flywheel. What you're going to find is that as you execute on these habits, they are going to compound. As you continue to send out emails, as you educate, as you have 3 conversations every month with business owners, you're going to learn a lot from that. Some of you are here and you're saying, hey, Micah, this is great. I want to pour fuel on the fire. How do I get to faster results? And I would just say, you got to walk before you run. If you go through the first 90 days and you've implemented all the things that we've talked about, right? And you even download my playbook at the end of this webinar, and you're deploying that piece. You've built your team, you know who you want to be, you've built your team, your exit advisory team, you've got your value growth advisor set up, you're beginning to deploy. Now you're ready to move on to the 102 level of client acquisition. And we've got the entire second half of that playbook that's available to you. We've just released it today. You'll be able to download it here in just a few minutes. That goes through the 1 and 2 level of client acquisition. Things like targeting business owners, creating a complete growth strategy, having clarity in your messaging, the 6 ways to connect with business owners, 8 high leverage growth tactics for wealth advisors. We go through that in that playbook. That's actually what our webinar next month for wealth advisors will be about. So we invite you to tune back in. But in the short term, if you want to pour fuel on the fire, download that playbook at the end of this webinar. Ultimately, we're doing all of this. At some point, we're educating and conversing because we want that client to engage, right? And so you've got 2 different choices. When a client engages and they say, oh yeah, I'm interested in talking about exit advisor, you get 2 choices: educate or make an introduction. That's really what it boils down to. So again, you say, how do I educate my client? Because some clients aren't ready yet. They're very on the front side. They don't want to have a one-to-one consult with your value growth advisor or with our team. They want to be educated. And so here's some of the things that we have put together and that we make available to our partners if you want to explore a partnership with us. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this call. One, we've got a 5-minute quick assessment. You can find it on our website, legendaryexits.com. Go all the way down to the footer. 15 questions, 5 minutes or less, your client can get a score about how likely and ready they are to be able to exit. We've got a monthly webinar. I've talked about that next Tuesday for business owners, the 8 key questions. We have, just like we have a wealth advisor playbook that we have released today, last week, we released our Ready to Exit playbook. It's about a 30-page playbook that walks an owner exactly through what they need to do to get ready to exit and have a legendary exit. We've got a weekly email series that comes out about things that are beyond the exit or more than the exit. We've got case studies. We interview exited entrepreneurs and folks who are building and the folks that guide them on a podcast. And so we've got stories that are there that folks love to listen into. And so if you're working with the Legendary Exits team, those are all possibilities of how you can educate. The other option, of course, is the client says, yes, I know I need outside help, and now is the time, and I want to do something about it. And that's where you need to introduce that client to your business value growth advisor. And that's really as simple as it comes. As we come into the close, I just want to address a couple of quick things. We're going to get ready to open up Q&A in a minute. I'm going to put a slide up on screen where you can download that playbook that I've talked about for wealth advisors that has just a ton of great resources. But what does it look like to partner with our team? I've talked about this webinar in a very agnostic way of partnering with a value growth advisor. We are business value growth advisors. And what does it look like to partner with our team, and how can we help you if you were interested? Well, the first way we can help you is book a call with us. Elise is our head of partnerships. And 2 reasons that you would book a call with Elise. One, you want to discuss a very specific client opportunity. You say, Micah, I've got a client, I'm locked and loaded. I know that they need to do something. And I just have not found a great business value growth advisor before today. We'd love to have an opportunity to just chat with you privately for 15, 30 minutes and just talk about how we could partner together on that client. The other is to actually bring you into our partnerships program. What do partners of Legendary Exits get? They get all of those resources that I've just talked to you about a minute ago. But then we have 3 different levels of partnership, and Elise can walk you through and help you understand what you qualify for. There are certain partners, just because they've got a little bit more current business owner clients, that we bring into a one-to-one coaching program. It's totally free. It's totally complimentary. We could charge for that. We don't, because we're seeking to add value to the community. And obviously, grow our practice and in turn help you grow your practice at the same time. We do have strategic partnerships at the team level and at the firm or the agency level, depending upon your terminology. And these are for firms that have collectively over 100 business owner clients. And we do some additional sort of special things that are there. But what I would say is book a call with Elise, and Elise can walk you through that. I am going to open up Q&A. There are two Q&R codes, or pardon me, QR codes that you see on screen. If you're on a desktop and you've got these up in front of you, you can pull out your mobile phone and you say, hey, I know I want to book a call with Elise. I want to talk about a specific client. I want to explore that partnership program. That'll take you through right to a booking page where you can do that. If you want to get that playbook, and I would suggest that you do because it is amazing. Not in my words, I've had 10 different CEPA wealth advisors review it, and they've all said, this is the best thing that I have read in a long time to help me know how to extract value and move forward. And so you can click on that QR code there. If you need the links, I'm sure we can get the links into chat. With that, Jenna, we are going to open up Q&A. And do we have any questions in Q&A? And if not, would love to just have folks raise their hand and come right on stage and ask their questions. So Jenna, any questions in Q&A that we want to address?
Yeah, we do have a few and just wanted to also maybe address Richard's question that was in the chat. If you
Yeah.
can make me host, I can pull people out.
Yep. Awesome. And again, I know we're coming up on the end of our formal time, but we are going to stay here as long as, if you want to stay, you want to ask any questions, our time is flexible. We're going to stay here and answer as many questions as are raised. So yeah, Jen, I think I made you the host. What's our first question? And do you want to bring that person on stage?
Yeah, so Richard, you should have received a little notification if you can hop on, but Richard's question was he has one business selling to his employees and another launching with a round of funding. And basically looking for pathways to find funding for those events.
Cool. Richard, welcome.
Hey guys.
Glad to have you with us.
Oh,
Tell
very
us-
good, very good. So I don't know if this really applies to the group, but it does at
Yeah,
the
go
end,
for it.
right? Really, CEPAs are getting everybody ready to sell, and there's a lot of prep work.
Absolutely.
But I've got two different unique things that are funding, which might be good for notes for people, or you can address me off topic or afterwards. But I have a owner of a business that I work with that says he's selling to his 4 employees. It's not a real big place.
Yeah.
It's a little auto repair shop,
Sure.
and he's going to sell to them for like $300,000.
Wonderful.
And he knew that I had a CEPA thing. He had just seen it.
Okay.
So putting that out there does help. Sometimes you get somebody to drop in.
Wonderful.
But they need to find $300,000 in lending. So like that's some of the skills that CEPA doesn't really give you, right?
Yeah.
You got some of the training, but how do you do it?
I'm going to just go right to the resource that you need for a business of that size. Again, I've loaned $500 million in my first 10 years of my career. That client wants to look at the SBA 7A loan product. Your local banks will do 7A loan products, but the one bank I would point you to first is called Live Oak Bank out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Live Oak Bank does more SBA 7A loans than any other bank in the country. The 7A loan is the premier loan to acquire and buy businesses that has an SBA guarantee on it. The reason I like Live Oak is they run weekly sessions where your client can go on and actually learn about the loan product itself. So that is 100% where I would point you. That's definitely where they should start. And certainly if they need help, feel free to email us. Happy to give you some other resources, Richard, but that's definitely where I would point them.
My other one is very exciting. I have a tech company that is going through some rounds of funding. And so they recently had a $2 million series offering that they had. And I thought I might be able to tap in and see if there was investing money that was available for that, right? Not so much as a loan and a transfer, but sort of some private equity placement. And I didn't know if that was resources that we had either. I didn't find anything, so they raised the $2 million. But on full launch, they're likely to have more as they implement. Is that something we have right resources for?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I have a background in technology, tech services, tech product. I actually serve on the board of a VC funded tech co. So I'm happy to chat with you more offline after this if you want. But I think I think when you're raising money, you want to have a tight pitch deck and you want to know who the audience is that you're going to raise for, right? And when you're doing your angel round versus your Series A, Series B, and it sounds like they're either angel, sometimes we call angel family, friends, and fools round
Right. Yeah.
versus Series A, that's going to be a very different audience, right?
Right.
So happy to collab if you want to shoot me an email and
Yeah.
point you in some directions. But there's some angel investor networks that they could go to and a bunch of other places that I could point you to.
Great. Great. That'll
Yep.
be good. If I can
Awesome.
keep you
Great.
involved, even better.
Great. Wonderful. Jenna, who do we have next?
Awesome. And next, Jackson Smith, we're going to pull you out. He had a couple questions here in our Q&A.
Wonderful. Jackson, if you're with us, you can click that button and come up on. Here he is. Awesome.
Hey,
Jackson.
Micah. How you doing? Thanks for
I'm
having
doing
me.
great.
This was
Doing
awesome.
great. Wonderful.
Hey, so how do you vet your financial advisors to make sure that they're holding up their end of the bargain, so to speak?
Ooh, great question. Great question. You know, I think anytime that you're dealing with a partner or with a client, we have buyer personas, right? You know, firmographics, things that are true about the company, demographics, things that are true about the person, but then there's psychographics, which is what people believe and feel and think. And the biggest thing that we look for, and actually address this in my wealth advisor playbook, so you're giving me a softball. We talk about the psychographics of who we partner with. And I would say the biggest one is they're people who have an abundance mindset and they're people who are people of action, right? Because sitting around and talking doesn't generate value. It's action that moves us to value, right? And
Yep.
so I think just in general, when we seek to bring on a partner, you know, obviously there's a conversation around, hey, do you have current business owner clients or you're building? But there's a strong conversation that I know at least in the partnerships team has around, you know, um, what do we share similar beliefs about what
Yep.
business is about? And then is this partner a person of action? So follow-ups on
Sure.
that?
No, that's good for now. We can follow up more a different
Yeah.
time. I'm sorry, I'm out at meeting my wife out at a appointment. We got baby number 5 on the way. So,
Oh,
um,
congrats. Congrats. That
thank
is
you. And
exciting.
thanks. The last question I had was do you work with companies who are looking at an ESOP? One of my current clients, they are, really starting to weigh all these decisions, and the
Yeah.
ESOP option, they're a 30 employee company, 10 years old. To me, they kind of look like a prime candidate. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience with
Yeah.
that realm?
Happy to. Quick follow-up. Do we know what their net profitability is per year?
I know they're doing 11 million in revenue. I think their profit is around $1 million a year.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Cool. That gives me a little bit of guidance. So yes, we do have experience with ESOPs. Couple of things in no particular order for your benefit and everybody else on the call. If a client says, I want to go towards an ESOP, they still need to go through the identify phase. That's a really, really key, important exercise.
Yep.
Um, and I can wax long-winded about why that is, but there's 8 key questions that we believe need to be answered in the identify phase. One of those is the 8 ways to exit. And I think a lot of times clients don't really understand the pros and cons of an ESOP versus a management buyout versus selling to PE. And sometimes it's value, sometimes it's when you get paid and all those sorts of things. Okay,
Yep.
specific context to your question. Um, what we see that needs to be successful for an ESOP to happen is 2 things. Very strong management or leadership team to have continuity of the business after the ESOP is put in place. Second thing that needs to be true is that if it's going to be a leveraged buyout, so you have to ask yourself when the owner is selling to the ESOP, when and how is he getting paid? If he wants to get paid up front, what's happening is that the ESOP, the business, is going and taking out company or corporate debt for that. Here's the
Yep.
key issue as a former commercial lender. It's going to be non-recourse debt, which is banker lingo for no personal guarantee. Generally, what has to be true is that a company is going to be pushing $2 to $3 million of profit to the bottom line to be strong enough and big enough to qualify for non-recourse debt with no personal guarantee. So my rule of thumb when I'm consulting with a client, I don't rule it out. And we have partners like CSG that's in the EPI group as an example, and then others that we know in the ESOP community. I don't rule it out, if they're at 2 million, but my general rule of thumb is strong management team and $3 million of profit at a minimum.
Yeah, they're both young, actually. So I actually think I know you got to do at least 30% to qualify for the tax advantages. So I've actually been, I'd actually like to talk more offline with you because I think a partial ESOP, these
Yeah.
guys are a dead ringer for a partial ESOP
Yes.
from my
Now,
standpoint.
last piece on the ESOP, and this is the terms piece, right? So we always say, you set the price, I get to set the terms. That's common M&A deal language. One of the things we go through
Yep.
in the 8 ways to exit during the identify phase, which we think takes about 6 months to go through the identify phase properly, right? Is one of the things you will find is that if you have a really valuable business, and I define a really valuable business as a business that is valued at more than 3 times annual earnings. When you have a business that is valued at more than 3 times annual earnings, so we're at 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times annual earnings as the multiple, it's going to take a really, really long time to get paid out by converting to an ESOP. And the reason why that is because interest rates are so high today, you're going to be limited to financing about 3 times annual earnings in the first tranche. And so if
Okay.
you got a business that's valued at, let's call it 6 times annual earnings, the owner's going to be able to sell about 50% of the stock up front. It's going to get structured on a 7 or 10 year note to get repaid. And then they're going to have to hold the other equity until that gets paid down and they retake out another tranche of debt. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So my other thing I'm thinking about with an owner is always it's great to build to a 10 million, 15, 5 million, $50 million exit. But what is the owner's expectations about when they get paid and how quickly they get paid? If they want to get paid quickly, almost never is an ESOP the right option for them, just to be clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk more with you about
Yeah.
this. I appreciate you answering my questions. I have to
Cool.
run, but this was great.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Good luck on baby 5, Jackson. Thanks for
Thanks,
joining
Micah.
us. All right. Jana, other folks that are in the queue?
Yes. Next, we are going to hear from Derek Drushel. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly, Derek.
Derek, if you're with us, hit that button. It'll bring you right up into being on screen. We'll give you a quick second here. I don't know if Derek's still with us, Jenna. I know we're 9 minutes past our formal meeting time. We are happy to be here. We'll stay here and answer all the questions that we can.
Let me also let me pull out D. Bradley while we are
Yeah, that's we hear you, Derek. You're on the phone. That's fine. We'll come back to you. Let's
Yeah, I'm not
invite
sure
Dee
if
to
it
join
will
us.
pull up on and then let me see. It's
And
D. Bradley.
Richard
There
will.
we go. And now,
Richard, I see your comment on my email. We'll shoot you an email after this as well. Richard Cox, that is. Okay, Dee, you're on stage. Just need you to unmute, turn your camera on if you want to, and serve up your question. There you
Great,
go. You're
Micah.
unmuted.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Hey, I came across an interesting situation. It's a family business.
Yes.
Father is getting ready to exit. He's got his successors in place,
Wonderful.
and he's put a nice deal together for him. So it's kind of like an in-house transfer.
Yeah. Great.
Let's just say it's $1 million a year for the next 2 decades, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot we could do to help him structure the deal so it happens in the most tax efficient manner and also doesn't trigger any valuation concerns.
Yes.
If there were to be an audit or, upon the founder's demise, what would you suggest we would bring to the table for him, and how could we engage?
Yeah, great question. So my general rule of thumb is always going to be there's 8 questions. So this is a core part of our methodology. And in fact, I alluded to the business owner webinar that we're doing next Tuesday at the same time. If this interests anybody who's listening to this, come to the webinar. There's 8 key questions that we believe every exit strategy needs to address. We go through those in a very first call with a client, both to educate and assess. Those also happen to be the 8 questions that we think you need to answer in the identify phase. And so I'll just tick through this super quickly with you off the top of my head. Is my business attractive and ready to sell? Now, obviously, if he's got, owners can't answer that. They need a third party to do it through an assessment, right? If he's going to transact internally, that's great. Is that really what he wants to do, right? So I'm not going to try to blow up your deal, but it sounds like he doesn't need to do that, right? Second piece of the puzzle is setting a vision of best-in-class performance. So we're going out, we're benchmarking, we're saying, hey, profitability, best-in-class company, 75th percentile would be X. Here's where you are. and then obviously chasing down the disparity about why the difference is, because that leads to transformation, right? Third question would just be looking at the deal comps of the valuation, because if I'm the second generation business, I want to, so the next generation who's buying it, is he passing it down to
Yep.
family members or to management?
Yeah, it's family members who are management.
Wonderful. So obviously, just from the family members' point of view, we want to make sure that we're not overpaying for the business, right?
Mhm.
Is dad or mom getting too much out of the business? It might be interesting to look at some of the deal comps there. Obviously, there's the perspective of, what is dad or mom going to do to live that life of significance and not have regret when they sell, because so much of our identity as business owners is wrapped up. We move into the fifth question, and that is the personal financial plan that I know you've got, D, and I'm sure you've already figured out how all this is going to play into the owner's life. There is the 8 ways to exit. That's the sixth question. There is the timeline. And then really the eighth question is just a strategy to bridge the gap in the two. So now that I've been long-winded on all of this, I'll come and give you a custom response. So I'm always in favor of people going through the identify phase, because we do a good bit of work with family generational businesses. And there's a couple of things that always come up. The first one that always comes up is I say, hey, anybody who's going to buy a business, what is the best way to wash out the purchase price after you buy it? It's to transform their business and grow the value. Where are the opportunities at to do that? So really the work that you would classically do in an identify phase, although it may not be for the benefit of the current owner, the current management and leadership team would greatly benefit from it. So that would be my first response. Second response would be, if dad slash mom in current management have come to an agreement on price, that's totally cool. Where I find there tends to be a lot of misalignment is the next gen thinks the business is going to be given to them, but yet dad can't move on without monetizing. And so to your point, because you talked about, you didn't say it explicitly, but you were talking about doing a certified valuation for IRS fair market purposes, because of the related party transaction. Yes, I would do that. Yes, I would think about that. Yes, I'd be thinking about pulling in. It sounds like he's going to do a seller held note to spread out the cap gain. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So the converse point of the converse point of that would be thinking about the estate tax exclusion, right? Is that
Mhm.
going to change? What do we think is going to change? Do we want to sell more sooner rather than later, because of the difference between fair market value and what he wants to sell at? I would just in general, I would say I think most of your issues are really around taxation. And so happy to
Yep.
chat with you more, one-to-one if you would like to. But I think you're going to need to do a certified valuation to document fair market value, if it's going to be sold at a discounted price. And you're going to want to think about the estate tax exclusion and pulling that in. And then obviously you're going to want to think
Mhm.
about even the million a year that he's getting, obviously, what are your general plays to mitigate and reduce that?
Yeah. Great. Appreciate it.
Cool. Awesome. Great question, D. Thank you. Jenna, other folks?
I think that's all we have, Derek. We can follow up with you offline. I know you said you are in the middle of dinner there. So, unless anyone else has any questions, I think that is it.
Wonderful. Well, hey, everybody, great to be with you. Again, uh, love to encourage you to take that next step, whatever that next step is on your journey. And if we can be a help to you by you booking a call to talk about a client or our partnership program, love to do that. If you want to download our playbook and really see even how we throw some fuel on the fire and get into new client acquisition, love to see you do that. Again, next week at the same time, we are doing a webinar that would be a great educational resource for any of your clients. And so if you want to get that, we're happy to send that out as well to all the attendees. So with that, thanks for being with us. We are going to wrap and wish you success and hope to be in touch with you very soon. Take care, everybody.